Hello and welcome back, or welcome to Version of Events. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Jessica, and this is News Roundup episode 12, Mushrooms and Manslaughter.
And this week we have a few cases to get to, including the latest in the Lucy Letby case and what's going on in the Erin Patterson case.
That's right, but first we have some corrections to bring you from the Daniel Anjorin case.
Yeah, we do. So here on Version of Events, we do our best to get things right the first time. But occasionally we will make mistakes. But what is important is how we deal with that, and it's important that we correct those mistakes, so that's what I'm going to do today. In the Daniel Anjorin case from last week, I called Donato Iwule Donald and mistakenly called PC Yasmin Mechin Whitfield Mechin Whitefield. I would also like to make it clear that while it seems that Monzo was psychotic, that was not his line of defence in trial.
That's interesting because that was very much the headline, wasn't it? That he had a psychotic break after use of cannabis.
Yeah.
So, but he didn't go for that in trial.
No, apparently not. The person that made the corrections apparent to me is Kirsty O'Connor of the Crown Prosecution Service. She also happens to be my friend, so thanks, Kirsty, and hi. She also gave me the statement that she made, which gets into it a little bit, so I'll read you that statement now. The CPS maintained throughout that Arduini Monzo's mental state was driven by his own cannabis misuse, which meant that he was fully responsible for the devastation caused last year. The jury, by their unequivocal verdicts, have accepted the prosecution case. Our hearts go out to Daniel Anjorin's family and friends who have suffered his unimaginable loss in horrific circumstances. And our thoughts remain with all of the victims who continue to recover from their injuries and trauma. The courage shown by PC Mechin Whitfield, PC King, Inspector Campbell, and others who selflessly sought to apprehend Arduini Monzo while facing extreme personal danger was exceptional and undoubtedly prevented further loss of life. We all owe them a debt of gratitude.
Wow, that's a great statement.
It is a great statement. And I think it shows that, Monzo was very aware of how cannabis affected him, and he chose to continue taking it, and that does make him fully responsible for his actions on that devastating day.
Yeah, I read in the judge's sentencing remarks that he continued to use cannabis despite knowing that it made him paranoid. It had other impacts on his mental state. And yeah, he chose to continue using it. A condition that comes from voluntary intoxication is not generally a defence in British law. So
no, it's not. And I think that's probably why they didn't use the psychosis, because it came from voluntary intoxication. Kirsty gave this brilliant statement through the CPS press office, and she worked very hard on that case. I know Kirsty works hard on all of her cases, but I think this one meant a lot to her. I think you can tell that just by the statement.
Yeah, so well done to Kirsty, and obviously our thoughts are also with Daniel's family and friends and with the other victims and, of course, the officers involved in this.
Absolutely. Right, so with those corrections sorted out, I believe next we're talking about Erin Patterson, Jess. Tell us all about it. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so Erin Patterson has been making headlines for the last 2 years, really, and people may know this as the mushroom murders. So this is down in Australia, in Leongatha in Victoria. Erin Patterson has been found guilty of murdering her estranged husband's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, his aunt, Heather Wilkinson, and she's been found guilty of the attempted murder of his uncle, Ian Wilkinson. And this is all done by poisoning them with death cap mushrooms.
Wow.
So on July 29th, 2023, the 4 victims went to Erin's home for lunch, where she served individual beef Wellingtons with a mushroom duxelle, which is like a mushroom mince. And yes, I did have to learn the word duxelle just for this. So Erin invited, and just to be clear, I'm referring to her as Erin. I'm referring to people by their first names because there's 4 Pattersons and 2 Wilkinsons. It's just easier. It's not out of any sympathy for Erin Patterson, who is a murderer. So Erin invited her in-laws and her husband Simon to lunch with the pretense that she was ill. Simon declined, saying that he felt too uncomfortable. That was not really surprising because the relationship had very much soured between the two. But also, Simon suspected Erin of trying to poison him on several previous occasions.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. He even spent 21 days in intensive care in May 2022 after collapsing at home with a gastrointestinal issue.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was really unwell. He had to have several operations on his intestines, and his family were called to say goodbye to him because they didn't think he'd make it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. And Erin was charged with 3 counts of the attempted murder of Simon on these previous occasions. These were dropped before trial, and obviously we are not made aware of why charging decisions are made. I think it's possible. I think it seems to be kind of a lack of evidence for these, because for the other charges they had so much evidence. But also, I think the case was very strong for the 4 cases that she was tried for, and I think they wanted to focus in on that.
Not muddy the water, as it were.
So you've got 4 very strong cases relating to the lunch in 2023, and 3 charges where the evidence is less strong. Like you say, it muddies the water. People might think maybe it's not that strong for any of them. So, not long after leaving the fateful lunch, all 4 guests became very ill, and they went to hospital. They were diagnosed with having been poisoned with death cap mushrooms. Gail and Heather sadly died on August 4th, and Don died the following day on August the 5th.
So I've just noticed that's a very quick illness to kill them, because it's on January 29th that the lunch takes place.
July 29th, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. July 29th. So that's really a short period to be ill and die.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been some strong poison.
Yes, definitely, yeah. And of course, Ian was also very ill. He was in hospital for several weeks, kind of rehabilitating.
Yeah.
And he thankfully survived, but yeah, really, really rough illness for him as well.
Yeah. God.
So the police and, well, everyone else really began to suspect Erin almost immediately. And yeah, I've got to be honest, from the very basic facts of the case, I thought she did it. So everyone else who was there is dead or dying. They're her in-laws of her estranged husband. So even if you can't pin down a specific motive, something financial, something like a recent argument, there's plenty of scope in that for hostility in that relationship.
Yeah.
And the kicker for me was that some of the guests said that Erin's children were also present, which she disputes. But the children ate something else. They didn't have the same lunch.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, And like a lot of evidence, there's the other. You could explain it and say, well, they just don't like this food.
Yeah.
Although I would point out that Erin claims they ate the leftovers the next day. So if I tend to believe the guests and that they were there, so the fact that the children ate something else is suspicious.
Yeah. And I doubt that she would have kept poisonous leftovers at risk of her children eating them.
Yeah, I'll just say my theory on that now. I think there's no way she gave her children the same poisoned food. She says she scraped off the mushrooms. That's way too big a risk to take. Anyone who's got allergies knows that, like, even a small amount of something can be really dangerous. She gave her children something else and told the police it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's what I think. So Erin's 4 victims, as I said, went to the hospital. And Erin also went to hospital the next day. She reported diarrhea and some other gastrointestinal issues, but she discharged herself from hospital against medical advice. And the hospital, when she got there, they basically said, we were expecting you, we believe you've been exposed to this poison. And they were so concerned when she discharged herself that they actually called the police and said, this woman's discharged herself, she's been poisoned, can you find her? And so, yeah, if she had genuinely been poisoned, she would have remained in hospital.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%. So Erin continued her lies from start to finish. So they began with telling her guests that she had cancer, basically, and escalated even further from there. You got some thoughts on that, babe?
I do have some thoughts on that, and they are not very nice thoughts. They are not very nice thoughts at all. No. Faking cancer is one of the lowest things that you can do.
Yeah. It's everything about what she did and what she said is suspicious and gets worse. Gets more suspicious, I should say. So Erin told the police that she got the mushrooms from a shop, and she specified that it was an Asian shop, and I think she's trying to exploit some racist fears there about Asians, to be completely honest. But of course, this was a lie. She foraged those mushrooms, death cap mushrooms, and put them in the food.
Yeah.
She denied ever having owned a food dehydrator after the police had already found the instruction manual for a food dehydrator in her house. She's not a good liar.
No, she is not a good liar at all.
But this is wild to me. Just what a tangled web we weave. It's one of those. In her subsequent police statement, she said that she had in fact thrown away a food dehydrator a long time ago, which is another lie. She threw it away shortly after she murdered 3 people and almost murdered someone else. And she's still saying, oh yeah, it was ages ago. So at trial, the defence was forced to accept that all 4 victims had ingested the death cap mushrooms in their beef Wellingtons, but they obviously disputed that was intentional. Their case was that Erin had foraged the death cap mushrooms, and she'd used them without knowing that they were death cap mushrooms. And the suggestion was always that she had also been poisoned, and that's why she had these gastro symptoms.
Yeah.
However, there's no real evidence that she had any of these symptoms. And also, as you pointed out, Ellie, this was really strong poison. These people were really ill. 3 of them died. They didn't just have diarrhea.
Yeah.
To be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
One weakness to give some balance. One weakness of the prosecution case was that they stated they were unable to identify a clear motive for Erin to kill her in-laws, and they said to the jury, quote, "You do not have to be satisfied what the motive was, or even that there was one. the prosecution will not be suggesting that there was a particular motive to do what she did. And this bothers me somewhat, but not hugely. So in a normal kind of murder case, failing to identify a motive wouldn't really concern me at all. And the reason I say that is people kill people all the time. And how often is the reason good enough? How often
Yeah.
do you hear a motive and think, yes, I get it? It's, the reason is usually incomprehensible to other people.
Yes, absolutely. It's rationalizing the irrational, isn't it?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. That's perfectly said. And that's the reason the prosecution doesn't have to prove motive. But in this case, because of the slight possibility that it was an accident, the defense obviously made a big deal of it. But for me, the sheer improbability that you have 4 guests over, they all get poisoned, you don't, that's already incredibly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
But also just the sheer number of lies. From start to finish, Erin Patterson told lies to everyone. And you can't just... I don't think it's a convincing explanation to just say, oh, I was scared of the police.
Yeah.
After what she did, of course, if it was an accident, yeah, she would be scared of the police. But you have to do the right thing and say if there had been an accident, and she didn't do that.
No.
And the reason she didn't do that is because she poisoned them on purpose.
Yes.
And just also on the kind of issue of, on the subject of motive, Jason Blair wrote this recently in an article on the True Crime Times about Brian Koberger, the guilty Idaho 4 murderer. And Jason said, I have sat down with several killers as a reporter and have concluded that people kill for any reason and no reason, but the last person who has the slightest idea why is the killer. And so, yeah, I think sometimes we overstate the importance of motive. The reason's never good enough.
No, I think it's a human reaction to want to know why. But like you say, knowing why, it's almost never, well, not almost never, it's never good enough.
Yeah. You're right, and it is a human response to try and understand why and understand motive. So that's why I'm about to try and explain what I think the motive was. Despite everything I've said. So I would argue that the prosecution got a lot closer to showing motive than they said that they would.
Okay.
So firstly, there's obvious hostility between Erin and Simon and between Erin and Simon's family. It's not just that they were estranged, the relationship had got worse. And in messages to friends in a true crime group, actually. So if you're planning to murder anyone, be careful who you're chatting to in the groups, guys.
Yeah.
Don't murder anyone. That's a joke. Don't murder anyone. She had complained about one of her victims, Simon's father, Don, because Don had declined to act as an intermediary or adjudicator between Erin and Simon about their 2 kids. There is some naughty language here, guys, so if you need to skip, give it 20 seconds or so. Erin texted her friend and said, "This family, I swear to fucking God, I'm sick of this shit. I want nothing to do with them." And she described Simon as horrible, gaslighting and abusive. She complained to a child centre worker that Simon was getting nasty, and Simon himself described the relationship as toxic.
I think it's very interesting that, they can't even communicate about the kids. This is really, really soured a very long way. And it's interesting that she was complaining about Don not being an intermediary between her and Simon, but why would he be? He'd be on his son's side.
Yes. Yes. As you're the person you need an intermediary, you want them to be independent. So it's not Don's responsibility to try and do that, and Erin's bitterness just really comes through in these messages.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the defence didn't dispute, actually, that the relationship with Simon had soured. They just disputed when exactly it started to sour. So Erin and Simon have been estranged for a few years and separated, but they were still going to the same church. I think it was kind of a getting along for the kids thing in a lot of ways. But Simon says that he noticed the relationship had soured after he listed himself as separated on a tax return in the latter half of 2022. Erin, in her testimony, says, "Oh, no, it wasn't then. It was a few weeks later." And I just think, so what? It still happened. But she says things got worse between them after Simon began refusing to pay medical bills and school fees. And Simon disputes that's what happened, by the way. But that's what she said in her testimony. This part is, I mean, the whole thing is really sad, of course. But this part is particularly kind of emotional. The couple's 14-year-old son had told the police his parents' relationship was very negative, saying, "I know Dad does a lot of things to try and hurt Mum." Erin herself said in texts that their son hates his dad. And right there, that's some parental alienation.
Yeah, it is.
She's turned him away. She's turned him against his dad.
Yeah, and it's so sad. Because obviously at 14, you can't tell that somebody is manipulating you, especially somebody that you love. You know, like your mum. You trust them. That's just your automatic reaction. You do what they say because you trust them, and they've always kept you safe and loved you. So, yeah, that's really sad. And I assume that the children are with their father now that their mother is in prison. And I hope that they're well, and I hope that they're able to repair their relationship from the damage done by Erin.
Yeah. They are rightly anonymised, but I would assume they're with Simon.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously, just a really sad situation. So yeah, I'm pretty firm on what I think the motive was. I think it's just an intense hatred of Simon and his family and wanting them out of the picture. But there is a kind of what I would say is perhaps a more outlandish theory. So a few years beforehand, before all this happened, Erin was left $2 million Australian dollars in inheritance, and she loaned 400,000 Aussie dollars to Simon's siblings.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
And so the theory goes, the parents out of the picture, they leave an inheritance, Erin gets her loans back, these off-book loans.
Yeah.
The reason I mean, that might be in the back of her mind, that might be part of it, and of course we don't know what the motive was. The reason I tend to think it's just this, the reason I tend to think it's the hatred is because there's no evidence that Erin cared at all about this money. There's no messages saying, when am I getting it back? There's no payment plan.
Okay.
She seems to, I think she wanted people to like her.
Yeah.
And essentially had written this money off. So that's what I think. We'll never know. But again, prosecution doesn't have to prove motive. Why she did it doesn't matter. The fact is, she did it. She absolutely did this on purpose. And
the jury saw it that way.
Yes, thank you. The jury saw it that way, and thank goodness for that, because she's going to prison. That's where she needs to be.
Have they sentenced her yet, or is that still incoming?
That is still incoming, and I would assume that she will get a a very long sentence, potentially even a kind of potentially even a whole life order.
Yeah.
4 victims, 3 dead. I mean, and also
Yeah.
it doesn't get more premeditated than poisoning someone.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It really takes thought, research, and time to do that, because she had to find out where to forage the mushrooms.
Yeah.
Then she had to forage the mushrooms. Then she had to dehydrate the mushrooms, and then cook
Make
them
into a duxelle.
Cook
Yeah.
them and serve them. So
Yeah.
there were many points there at which she could have stopped and didn't.
Yes, and that's something else I think is interesting. She went ahead with this plan, even though Simon declined to turn up.
Yeah.
Because he didn't feel comfortable. I have to think she just thought this is the last chance she was going to have, and she
Yeah.
was desperate to poison them.
Yeah, I think so. Because I'm amazed that the 4 of them turned up, to be honest. If
Yeah.
things were that sour. So I think that shows the level of manipulation that she displayed to them to get them to turn up in the first place.
Yeah, and it's senseless, and even let's assume that my motive theory is correct. It's not like a hugely advanced theory. It's just she didn't like people. She hated people. And it's so senseless and terrible. And I just, I hope the kids are able to recover from what their mother has done.
Yeah.
I mean, Ian has survived, and I hope that he is doing well. And Simon is, I think he's kind of a hero, to be honest. His testimony, he was far less harsh on Erin than he could have been. And also, I believe it was the Mushroom Case Daily podcast that reported that Simon's planning to do his own podcast on this case. And I so hope that happens. Simon, if you ever hear this, please do the podcast, because I will listen to every second of that. I would love to hear his side of the story.
Yeah, me too. All you need is a microphone and the internet. It's really easy.
Yeah, get on it, Simon. So yeah, that is the mushroom murder case of Erin Patterson, who is guilty.
Yeah, she is indeed. And now it is time for this week's Missing and Marginalised. Both cases this week are coming out of Australia. So to start off with, we have Tenzin Dorji. Tenzin Dorji is 22 and is missing from Perth, Australia. He was last seen on Chesterfield Road in Mirrabooka at about 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of July, 2025. Tenzin is around 180 centimetres tall. He's slim, he's Bhutanese and has short black hair. He is believed to be wearing a black jumper, dark grey sweatpants with cream Crocs, and he may be in the Middle Swan area of Perth. If you see Tenzin or you know any information regarding his whereabouts, please call police immediately on 131 444. That's 131 444.
Kayleigh McCall-Fittock is 13 and missing from Everett in Canberra, Australia. She's not been heard from since the night of Wednesday, 9th of July 2025, and her family are very concerned. She's white, she's around 163 centimetres tall, that's 5'4", with a slim build, fair complexion, long straight brown hair and brown eyes. Kayleigh's believed to be wearing a pink jumper and black pants. If you see Kayleigh or have any information regarding her whereabouts, please contact police on 131444, 131444, quoting reference number 8100569. That's 8100569. Right. Ellie, there has been some movement in the Lucy Letby case, hasn't there? Can you tell us about that?
There has indeed, and yes, I can. There has been 2 significant updates in the Letby case in recent weeks. Lucy Letby, for those that might not know, is the British nurse currently serving 15 whole life terms for the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 7 more. So there is, as listeners may be aware, a significant movement from what we might call the Letby lobby that state that she is innocent. But to be clear, she was convicted by 2 juries. Her convictions were upheld by 2 Court of Appeal judgments. As of now, her convictions have not been overturned, or indeed have even come close to being overturned. So Lucy Letby is legally guilty.
Yep. And yeah, I feel confident in her guilt, and these updates kind of cement that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm confident in her guilt as well. And the first update was the announcement of 3 arrests of hospital managers at the Countess of Chester Hospital, where Letby worked. We already know that a corporate manslaughter investigation was opened in 2023. And corporate manslaughter is where a company or organisation has been so negligent or its failings so significant that deaths resulting from them are a criminal offence on the part of a company. So these failings in the context of Letby's crimes would not be removing her from the ward as soon as suspicions were raised, or suspending her without prejudice while the police investigated. So that investigation is still ongoing. But obviously, even in a large organisation, individuals still make decisions, such as keeping someone on the ward or suspending them. And that isn't corporate manslaughter. If an individual does it, it's gross negligence manslaughter. And in March this year, police confirmed their investigation, codenamed Operation Duet, had been widened to include that offence. On the 30th of June, 3 arrests of hospital managers were made. They haven't been named, their ages haven't been given, and so while we could take an educated guess at who they are, we can't give any names.
Yet they will remain anonymous in the public until and unless they are charged, and we'll maintain that to make sure that there can be justice and a fair trial if that's what's decided.
Yeah. So a lot of Letby's supporters were happy about this news, despite the police stating that these arrests, quote, did not impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby for multiple offences of murder and attempted murder, end quote. That is, no one has been arrested for medical failings leading to these deaths. They've been arrested for the gross negligence in management that left Letby on the ward for a year, able to continue her killing spree.
Yeah, there's no... If anything, this cements my belief in her guilt, and it certainly shows, I think, confidence on behalf of the police and more broadly the prosecution, because they believe that they can sustain convictions of Letby, and they believe there's enough to investigate 3 other people for enabling her to do what she did.
Yeah.
A year's worth of killing babies.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's clearly no shift in the police for them to think that that actually maybe she's innocent after all.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there is another update, which I'm sure the Letby lobby are less happy about, and that is that Cheshire Police have confirmed that they've sent, quote, a file full of evidence, end quote, to the Crown Prosecution Services on other allegations regarding the, quote, deaths and non-fatal collapses of babies at the neonatal units of both the Countess of Chester Hospital and the Liverpool Women's Hospital as part of Operation Hummingbird. In short, the police believe there is enough evidence to charge Letby with even further crimes.
It's just so awful.
It is, and it gets worse because the press are reporting that there are more than a dozen alleged offences including in the file, and that it will be looked at by Stephen Parkinson, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and Lord Richard Hermer, KC, the Attorney General. So this is a really big deal. This isn't just going to any prosecutor, this is the prosecutor.
Yeah, and it makes sense. This is twice convicted, most prolific child killer, I believe, in British history, or at least in modern British history. This is a big deal, and it makes sense that they would go to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't want to get this wrong. There's no room for error here on their part. And so it makes a lot of sense that it goes across their desks.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we want to cover is the issue of legal professional privilege, better known to our American friends as attorney-client privilege. This is becoming more than just a concept in this case, as in her application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the defence have included supposed new evidence in the form of the expert panel, which concluded that there were no murders in this case. There is a significant problem here in that expert witnesses were available to Letby in both of her trials and were not used. She did not call any witnesses. And the obvious conclusion to draw from that is that these experts wouldn't have helped her case. If her experts said these weren't murders, then surely they would have called them.
Yeah, they Letby testified in both her trials, and they called a plumber to talk about a bit of kind of the ward not being clean, but they didn't call any experts, and that's a real problem.
Yeah.
In a trial of medical murders, when there are, I believe, 6 experts who testified for the prosecution, you don't call any expert witnesses.
Yeah.
I can't see any rationale for that other than the experts wouldn't have helped her.
Yeah, absolutely. And her trial lawyer was Ben Myers KC, who is a very experienced barrister. But unless she waives her privilege, he can't explain the decision that he made not to call any expert witnesses. So, according to Letby's current lawyer, Mark MacDonald, he hasn't contacted Myers, and Letby has not waived her privilege. So it's not clear how the Court of Appeal or the CCRC could consider the expert panel's opinions to be new evidence that she didn't have access to at the time if they don't know why the experts she had at trial weren't used.
Yeah, and I think it's stretching it to call new expert opinions new evidence that you wouldn't have had access to, because they had access to expert opinions. They just didn't use them. And the fact that Letby won't waive her privilege, or at least hasn't so far, suggests to me very strongly that the obvious reason for not calling the experts is the correct reason, that they wouldn't have helped her.
Yeah.
If there was another reason, if it was a trial strategy decision by Myers, if his view was, the prosecution haven't proved their case, it's it's fine, we don't need them, then she waived her privilege, he could explain that.
Yeah.
If she doesn't waive it, it makes me think, yeah, the whatever he would have to say wouldn't help her.
Yeah, I agree with you wholly. I think that's the only real reason that she can be possibly withholding her privilege. Because if this so-called new opinions is new evidence, then prove it, Letby. Prove it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I do feel that there's been some manoeuvring from the experts. So in particular, Dr. Xu Li. So Dr. Xu Li is very, very experienced, no disputing that whatsoever. But his paper on venal air embolism was a key piece of evidence used at trial. The defence knew this. They knew about this paper. They didn't contact Dr. Li at the time. After the trial, he learned about this, and he came forward with a new opinion, different from what was in his paper. He testified about that at the Court of Appeal, and Court of Appeal didn't accept Letby's appeal. He's now come with a third opinion on venal air embolism, and it's not entirely different. It's slightly different to his second opinion. And to me, I feel like there's some changing of medical opinions in order to call it a new evidence, and I think that's a bit sus.
Yeah, I agree with you. Why suddenly so invested in this girl's case as well? Like, why suddenly form a panel to say that there were no murders when they left out some of the evidence?
Yeah, you're right. There was the X-ray. There was an X-rays from some of the babies that showed clear lines of air that the prosecution theorized and put to the jury, and which was accepted by the jury, that Letby had murdered these babies with air embolism. That doesn't appear. That's not discussed in what's been released of the expert report. And also those after the expert panel released their findings, and with all due respect to these people who are very qualified, if it's not in court, it's a glorified press conference.
Yeah.
And after they did this, Dr. Lee is immediately saying Lucy Letby should be immediately released.
It's like, no, mate.
That's not how it works.
Yeah. It literally does not work like that. You cannot just turn around and say something and people go, oh, okay, and release people from prison. That it has to be proven in a court of law. It has to be,
You have to be subject to cross-examination.
Yeah, it has to be held to a higher level than just you all deciding that you're going to form this panel.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I question some of the motives. We'll see what the CCRC and the Court of Appeal do with it. But for me, if Letby can't explain why they didn't use the experts at trial, the new expert opinions, they're not new evidence.
No, I agree. I agree wholly. Right, let's move on to our last case. And it's an update on Reanne Coulson. Jess is gonna take us through this one, but I just want to say how sad this case is. And I have Reanne's family and friends in my thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Yeah, this week, Coventry police confirmed the sad news that we've been expecting. The body found in Binley Woods on the outskirts of Coventry on June the 27th was that of missing Coventry mum Reanne Coulson. Reanne was 34 and she was last seen on May the 21st, leaving a food bank at St Mary and St Benedict Church in Hillfields, Coventry. After her body was found, police did say immediately that they believed it was Reanne. They've now formally identified her. While investigating the case, police arrested Mohammed Durnian, age 42, and very quickly the police began searching the area in which Reanne's body was found. His co-defendant, Adam Moore, 38, was arrested the following day. Durnian has now been charged with murdering Reanne, and Moore has been charged with assisting an offender. Specifically, he's charged with assisting in disposing of Reanne's body.
Oh.
Yeah, this is so sad. This is local to me. I've been at the hearings. I'll continue to go. But yeah, really sad case. And like you say, Ellie, our sympathies are with Reanne's family and friends, loved ones, everyone who knew her. Reanne's life mattered, and we will continue to cover the prosecution of Durnian and Moore, and we'll continue to hope and pray that Reanne gets justice and to keep her at the centre of our coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. While, we will be covering the prosecution of Durnian and Moore, I know that Jess and I both feel strongly that Reanne should not be forgotten amongst that coverage. So, yeah, please do. We've had a few people comment on our posts that seem to know her and have commented some lovely things about Reanne, and I think that says a lot about her as a person, that people are willing to publicly comment on how lovely she was. So if you want to find our posts, they're on our Facebook page at Version of Events, and feel welcome to leave your tributes for her there.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, our thoughts go out to Reanne. The next hearing is on July the 24th. I will be there and I'll report from that.
Yeah, we will update you then. And I think that's it for today.
Yeah, that's all we've got this week, guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and don't forget that you can contact us at versionofevents@gmail.com, or you can slide into our DMs anywhere you find us at Version of Events. If you want to find us on YouTube, we're at Version of Events the Pod. Make it easier for you to find us on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't push us out yet, as we don't have the number of subscribers and listens yet. But I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. And guys, remember, we do love to hear from you. So yeah, sliding into those DMs, dropping us an email. If you've got any case recommendations, we've had a couple of great ones recently for deep dives, and also for Missing and Marginalised. We want to talk about people who are missing, who aren't getting the attention they deserve. So if there's someone in your area who's missing, or someone you know who's missing, please get in touch and we'll do what we can to cover their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be more than honoured to cover the stories of any of your friends or loved ones that might be missing. And we hope to hear from you all soon. And we will be back next week with another episode.
Yeah, and so until then, bye guys.
Bye.